After 40 plus hours of Blue Protocol, I think it's time that we do a ultimate first impressions. Hey everyone, Kyrios here, and I want to lay down my thoughts and opinions about Blue Protocol. We'll talk about the general journey, the good, the bad, and the awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's start this journey with the story, and we're not really going to do spoilers here, but effectively you start as the main character, you have amnesia, you can't remember where you came from, and you're helping save the world from essentially a born-again demon or some entity or god or something like that. Now, there's a couple things I really like about the story. One, the animation is done absolutely fantastic, and the music is so superb. It gets you in the moment. It's very epic. It's very well placed. I also like that your main character actually has a voice. There's way too many games nowadays in the MMO and gacha scene where they just don't voice the main character, and I've always found that to be kind of weird. Now, luckily, the first class that you level is going to level pretty quickly because when you follow the main quest line, it's going to give you a lot of EXP. Now, your adjacent characters that you try to level are going to be a little bit harder to level, where you're going to need to get into EXP parties, and you're going to need to do dungeons or any other way that you want to farm. It's kind of like a build your own adventure. If you want to go off on your own, you can. You want to go group up with some people and go farm some enemies to try and get some rare drops, you can do that. You just want to spam dungeons, you can also do that as well. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail a little bit later in the video about some of my grievances with the questing and the bounty boards and a few others, but there's some pros and cons to that. Now that we're about 40 hours into the game, I was able to level all 5 classes to a different degree. Since combat is active and fluid, it brought a uniqueness to each class, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed it more on some than others, but that might just be my style of play. Speaking of fluid, their netcode was stellar. Whether I was dancing in the town to the destruction of the closed beta with 200 people, or battling a raid boss with 30 members, I never felt input lag or ability lag. Well done, Blue Protocol. Now, we did experience some FPS drops due to the amount of players, hovering around 30 FPS in town to about 90 FPS out in the world with a 3080 NVIDIA. Now, that just might be the case because it doesn't have DLSS and it needs a little bit more optimization. So from an FPS perspective, they could do better, but from a netcoding perspective, they've done fantastic. The other benefit of the way that they've done their netcode is that every region is only going to have one server. So in Japan, there's only one giant server. When it comes out in NA, Europe, and a few other places, it's only going to have one server per region. And what they're going to do is they're going to scale channels up and down dramatically in order to accommodate all the players. So that means you'll, no matter what, be able to play with every friend you could possibly make in your region. Anyways, back to the classes. Now, you have 5 classes at the launch of the game, and they each have their pros and cons, and you'll find your style of play. Mine was Blade Warden, which I really liked. But you might like the Blade Warden, the Twin Striker, the Blast Archer, the Spellcaster, and the Heavy Smasher. They all have their pros and cons. Speaking of pros and cons, you can sub to this channel and help support us and help us grow this channel. If you want to know more about Blue Protocol content, hit that like and subscribe. Let's continue on with the review. Quickly reviewing those, starting with the Blade Warden, the pros that you have is that you're a lot more tanky. You do have a shield that can mitigate damage, you have different parry mechanics, and you could be a taunt tank or you could be a DPS tank. Now, the cons are you do have reduced damage and reduced support abilities. Next up, we have the Blast Archer, which the Blast Archer is absolutely amazing and actually one of the first classes I suggest a lot of people roll. Now, the pros of the Blast Archer is you're adaptable, your support, you can do debuffs, you can do buffs, and you can do healing. Now, the cons of the Blast Archer, unfortunately, is it does the lowest damage in the game, but you can supplement that damage with being able to support the rest of your team to do more damage. Next up, we do have the Twin Striker, which is the dual-wielding class. Now, this is the highest DPS class for single target and actually one of the most fun classes to play. Now, the pros of it is high single target damage, high DPS on top of that, especially in dungeons and in raids. But the cons is that you have very low healing and support abilities, so solo gameplay can be rough at times, especially when trying to take down multiple enemies, and you will lose the mages in AoE situations. Speaking of mages, that's next up on the board, and mages are actually a ton of fun, but a little awkward to play. So the pros of a mage is that they do high damage single target, not as high as the twin striker, but they do a lot of damage for AoE. Now the cons of the mage class is that you have very little survivability, you're a little squishy, and the fact that you have to charge your mana all the time with right click means that you really need group play in order to do maximum damage. Finally, we have the Heavy Smasher, which was the least played class I think I saw in the beta. I really didn't see anyone running it, and I think it's mainly because they play a little awkward. So the pros of the Heavy Smasher is they're kind of a jack of all trades. They can be an off tank, they could do a decent amount of DPS, and they could do a decent amount of AoE. So they're kind of the middle of all three classes. The cons is they're in the middle of all three classes, so they don't really do anything specifically well. And juggling the ammo mechanic with right click is a little awkward at time in both solo play and in group play. It'll be interesting to see if that resolves itself with higher levels. Now, finally, the last thing I'll touch on in this first impressions is just your general progression. Progression feels good. When you're doing the story, you're going to get a lot of EXP. You're going to get a lot of rank up where you have to rank up your adventure with these bounty boards. And the general progression of your first character is going to feel pretty good. But any of your adjacent characters are very grindy, but it is an MMO, and I actually do like grind, so I'm actually okay with that. But some people might get turned off by that. But if you only want to play one character, you'll be fine. But if you want to level up all the characters, the adjacent characters do take longer. Another thing I do want to point out is that with the crafting system and the way that you can get weapons, you have to get the different bounty boards in order to unlock the recipes, which is great, but some of them are a little convoluted and long, and they just need to be cleaned up a little bit. And I know I was translating, so it was a little bit of my own translation errors, but it was very confusing at times. Then on top of that, to get the ability to get the items you need to level up and make those weapons, sometimes they drop from enemies that only have like a 1% drop rate, where you'll have to get in those EXP farm parties and sit there and get like 10, 20, 30 of them. Probably not 30 of them, but maybe eventually, where it could take a while. But you're able to get two birds with one stone. And with fighting enemies, you can actually get super rare drop rates, whether it be a blue chest, a red chest, and they all drop you rare materials or rare images or augmentations. So that brings me to my general thoughts. Do I think Blue Protocol is going to be a great game? I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think the problem that they need to kind of figure out is their own identity. The joy and the problem of Blue Protocol is that they don't do anything unique. They essentially take the best of every single MMO and that's been out there, whether it be Final Fantasy XI, whether it be World of Warcraft, whether it be Final Fantasy XIV, whether it be Black Desert, and they kind of just merged the best mechanics of all of those together. They took a little crafting from here. They took the farming EXP from there. They took the way that you can change classes, which I didn't really talk about changing classes, but I assume you've been able to figure that out. Check our other video on how the classes system works. But that's the joy of this game, is that they just took a lot of great features and they just made them work in a really good game. Now, we don't know what the end game is going to look like, and a lot of people are saying those raids are the end game, and they're really not. So the raids that we put on the channel, the 30-person raids, those happen systematically. There should be some at around 20, there should be some at 30, 40, and maybe upwards of 50. And then there's arena, and then tower climbing. There's a bunch of different things to do that we don't even know what the actual end game looks like. And there may be supposedly hundreds of different ways you can build your characters with the different augmentations you can put in. So there is definitely a lot of grind here, and that could be for a good or bad thing. What's really going to make or break this game is the monetization. As long as they nail the monetization and keep it mainly to cosmetics and maybe some potions, EXP potions or whatnot, I think the game is going to be stellar. I'm always a little wary of MMOs that are free to play because it's either it's going to work or it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, sometimes you can go down a slippery slope. That's why games like Final Fantasy XIV to me, where it's a subscription model and you know what you're kind of paying for, is good. But subscription models are also a problem too. If you're only playing once or twice a month, it's not really worth your money. So other than that, I'm very excited about the game. I love the gameplay. It was high octane. It was beautiful. There was things to do. Everything mattered. I loved the town, and we will definitely be playing this game. So make sure you do follow this channel. I'll have class guides. We'll have more in-depth how you farm different rare materials. And come join us. Let's make a guild together. Let's go farm. And I'll see you guys out there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Take it easy. And fist bump from me to you.